virtually, so we're on the move, frequently on the move, always moving. Might as well bring you with me. I am going to talk to you today about the now moment and gratitude and how those are intrinsically tied. However, I wanted to share something with you. For anybody that lives in Colorado or is thinking about visiting Colorado, for the first time yesterday, I went to visit the Great Sand Dunes in Cresta, Colorado. And let me tell you what, that's one of the biggest mind-blowing experiences that I've ever had. It's a big giant sand dune with snow-capped mountains behind it. It was amazing. People were sledding on the sand and we're all dressed in our beanies and our snow gear and stuff because it's cold and windy, but it was phenomenal. Earth has so many things to really stand in awe of and just behold the beauty that is all around us, which really helps to tie into today's message, is that the now moment. I have people ask me sometimes, how do you get to the point that you slow your mind down and get to the now moment? Excuse me, and that's an excellent question, because that is the journey of slowing the mind down and doing whatever's necessary to really hack through the ego and the mind programming and the chatter and the doo-doo that comes up when we do try to slow down and get into a meditative state, etc. And there are people that can slow their mind down and get to the meditative state. However, when they're not there in that meditation state, the rest of their life is chaos, or they have trouble translating that into the rest of their life. Life as a meditative practice, life as a peaceful journey, etc. Even when we're really excited, even when we're really in some very profound and big energy, we can still be very balanced and peaceful about it. There is such a thing. And so one of the things that I've found for myself that really is a precise and very precision movement is to get in the now moment by expressing gratitude. And I personally started out with not expressing gratitude for anyone in particular and saying, I'm glad I have such and such, because I wanted to be profoundly grateful for more basic things. I'm grateful for my own breath. I'm grateful to be, right where I am. And, if I was outside, if I was inside, that, I'm grateful for having water to drink, food to eat. And on the days when I did not always have those things, I expressed gratitude at the most, basic level of what I did have, rather than, putting a lot of attention on what I didn't have. The now moment became easier to cope with what was going on in my now moment that I was losing, the battle with and feeling very overtaken by. It became much easier to mitigate the effect of that by being grateful for what I did have, because on the days when I didn't have food, for instance, I had water available, and I was very grateful for that. Okay, I don't understand this, I don't know why, it's happening this way, and I don't know exactly what to do about it. However, I'm grateful that I have water to drink, and that I have a roof over my head currently, that I am in warmth, that I'm not in the elements, etc. And as things got better, and as things, my apologies, that alarm frequently gets me. I think I turned it off and I don't. My apologies, though. Even on the days, when things still kind of get bunched up in my mind and I start believing the story, it's gotten easier because I've trained my mind, and that's really all it is to train the mind into paying more attention to what is going right than what we consider to be going wrong. And even whenever I look at things that I consider to be going wrong, let me tear that apart a bit and find out what's on the opposite end of that. Let me look at what's horrible about this. If I really have to pay attention to it, then let me do that in a very precise and clean, very precision Blu-ray kind of way. That let me pay attention to that and look at, okay, this is the horror of this situation. In understanding the balance of life, then that where there's an up, there's a down, that there's something equally as, okay on the other side of that. And if it's really, really horrible, then I may have to scrap hard for figuring out what's good about that. But the food, for instance, I learned how to fast by not having food. I mean, that's as simple as that. That I learned that I don't do anything except spend a lot of time, most of the time in that experience, spent most of the time just being butthurt about why I was in that position. To begin with, left with no money, etc. To be in that position, I was very upset about that. However, it caused me to figure out how to deal with those emotions because I was on an instant fast that was, I wasn't planning. However, those were the choices that I made that brought me there to play the game that I lost, and that was part of it. However, the gain in that is that I learned that through fasting, I was going to have to work through a lot of mind bubbles and mind clogs and mind junk to get past the hurt of figuring out how I got there to begin with, and be grateful that it cleared up a lot of stuff. I think it was 3 days before payday, before I got to food that particular time. And now, fasting happens in a more conscious way. However, it can be the same argument in my head, and brings the clarity regardless, because that is what I learned from it. That as awful as that situation was, to get into a fasting state on the fly and all of a sudden, and being victimized by it, etc., is, well, what is good about this is that I learned how to go into fasting in a very conscious way now. And I also learned through that very profound experience that fasting is a very good way, was a very good way for me to work through a lot of junk. And so even though it was very brutal, it was very painful, it was humiliating, etc., that I literally don't have any food to eat, this is awful, that was of course the initial, oh shit, and oh my god, how could this happen to me? How could they do this to me? Etc. It brought up all of that, and ultimately everything, no matter how awful it is, we can find goodness in it. And the now moment is in digging in somewhere, and finding gratitude for what we're doing and for what we're going through. And it's, maybe not easy to say, I'm really glad that I'm hungry. I was not saying that at the moment. I was saying, I'm glad I have water, and now on the other side of it, I could see better. However, in that moment, saying thank you and being grateful in that moment for what I did have, I still at that time had, a roof over my head. I still had, a bed to sleep in. I still had animals around me that, were my companions, etc. I still had many other things. However, that very fundamental, I don't have this, really knocked me back for a minute. Felt a lot of shame and resentment, etc. with that. And yet the beauty of it is that it cleared out a lot of that, prejudice in me that I had about food to begin with and about the situation I was in, and really brought a great deal of clarity about how I was going to change the situation I was in. And despite the fact that it was a horrible event, at the time, and I absolutely resented it, etc., and was deeply hurt by it, it cleared things up immensely. And because of that, going with the flow of it better than I ever had before gone with the flow of anything, I didn't have a choice, that it cleared things up immensely. Shortly after that, my life changed dramatically. Within a couple of weeks of that experience, at the absolute lowest point of my life was, being hungry and not having money for food, that there just wasn't that provision because other things had to be prioritized, to make sure that my animals were fed. They aren't going to fast very well, but I could, and so that was my choice to do so. However, it was still filled with shame, and I was very angry and bitter about how it was that I was in this situation. I'm a kind person, I don't deserve this, the whole 9 yards. And yet, diving deep into that and say, okay, well, I'm here, and I don't have anywhere else I'm going with this, and nothing else is going to change, that I'm aware of, then these are the choices I've made. And how can I find the gratitude in this moment to say, okay, this is what I am grateful for, and continue moving in that now moment. And it's a grip and growl sometimes. I'm not suggesting that we instantly get there. Instantly is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is very precision work to go through a lot of karma quickly, a lot of mind garbage quickly, with precision execution, when we really can tap into, I'm going to pay attention right now, what do I have right now? And gratitude in the now moment means I'm grateful right now. And then later we can figure out that now moment we can be grateful for where we are now with what we learned in that old now. However, being in the now means, and further and really enlarges my field, my energy, and my power surge, if you will. It surges it for longer. It helps carry me forward, activating continually with not acquiring more, garbage to have to work through. And any garbage that's still there, we can move through faster. But it's a training. The mind is a muscle that we've grown in a very, ugly way. And so retraining it, it's like only doing one type of exercise and one muscle group, in our body. And we've been, need to retrain that muscle group to never be moving in that way again. We're going to need to incorporate more muscle groups, we're going to need to really exercise that movement in a different way. The mind resists it. The mind doesn't like it. The ego doesn't appreciate it. And yet it doesn't serve us to get taken down, especially now. The stakes are raised every day that we wake up. The stakes are raised with a new design of the game and a new design of the matrix, a redesign, and it's calling us to always, get into the now moment, to no longer play the game, because if we're in the now moment, we can't be in the game. The game is either having you worry about what's already happened in the past or what's coming in the future. The now, is not where the Matrix 808 exists. The Matrix exists in a time component, and the now is in always infinite space. It's always now. There is no future or past in a now moment. And the more that we can stand in the gratitude and really empower that, activate that big, and really, really surge that, it sends our timelines forward, executing a lot of cleansing and clearing of stuff that we won't get into, we won't be gravitating towards, and anything that we did do, it really clears it out much faster than having to, dig into deep conversations with other people or write a million letters, and detaching and doing ceremonies, etc. Which, if it's working, great. I just found that, that wasn't working as well as me spending time, let me get right here into the grungier side of this and, face plant into it perhaps while I'm here. If I'm bothering to be here, then why don't I make the most of it while I'm here? And it's not to say that other practices are not valuable or valid. It's whatever gets you there. I just found that for me, it's a combination of all of it. I do everything and anything that I know in the now moment to do. That if it's to grab a feather and do a dance, then get busy doing that. If it's to do some crystal work, if it's to, do some, letter writing, it's whatever I know to do. However, it's always starting in that now moment now because I've trained my mind to do that. And anytime that I'm finding myself straying away from the now moment, getting concerned with, butthurt about something or someone or the way it was or the way it should be or all those conversations, I ask, the universe, please remind me, please, to my team of light, remind me that I'm getting ready to spin off into something that isn't infinity, that's some locked down place that is outside of me, because none of those things are real. They live in a container somewhere that I have the key and the governance of, then allow me the ability to really, in a precise way, a very precision blue wave kind of ray, get in there and let's move it off and move it away by being grateful. What can I be grateful for about this, garbage stuff that's happened to me? What can I be grateful for about the great stuff that's happened to me? Most of us, we can really get okay with being grateful for the good stuff because, duh, that's easy, Kate. However, being grateful for the other stuff, it can be difficult. However, I promise you, no matter how awful it is, no matter what there is, and another one, that's amazing. Okay, so a second alarm that I didn't even know I set. Wow. There is always something, no matter how yucky, no matter how many times I'm interrupted, no matter how many times I could be distracted, the now moment is still the now moment, and it's mine to grab a hold of and find in that design something that I can be grateful for. For instance, being interrupted twice for two very valuable things that I did not, consciously remember. However, the one I didn't remember at all, but I set a reminder, and I do in fact need to remember that. So the other one is a daily reminder. So it is good to be reminded of the now moment, and now the now moment of me is going to move into, I'm going to go for a beautiful hike and enjoy, it's currently the Christmas holidays, and it's in, time is irrelevant. However, it is the holiday time, and there's a lot of people traveling. There's a lot of people that are communing and getting together with their family, and I'm going to go get together with my family in the woods so and find my spirit team out there, and just be super grateful for the fact that I am able to do conscious movement better now because of where I was taken in my unconscious state of being, and grabbing a hold of the mind and training it to come with me. And I'm going to take this pony and let's train this differently rather than just let it run around and stomp me. That's not a good way to do this. I didn't like that ride. So anyway, take care of yourself. I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in, and remember to get within your skin because you're divine. It is so beautiful and so lovely and is magical all the time, every single time, and it's absolutely divine. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again next time. Goodbye, beautiful friends. Mwah.